redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Guys, I'm gonna be speaking with our guest, and I'm looking forward to this interview with James Carafano. He is the vice president of the Heritage Foundation, also national security, foreign policy expert at the Heritage Foundation, and not to mention that he's a vet. There has been so much foreign policy news that has broke in the last week or two. It has been absolutely insane. James Carafano is always on top of it. You can follow him online on Twitter at JJ Carafano, Carafano. James, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show podcast.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Carl. You know, I'm such a fan of what you do on the podcast and the radio show.
Thank you so much, James. Listen, I'm a fan of what you do, keeping us informed and up to date when it comes to foreign policy. All right, James, so I'm just going to run. I know you have a short period of time. There's a lot of subjects that I'd like to cover, and you just hit the most important points on each, if you would. But let me just tell the audience some of the things that I hope to cover with you in a short amount of time. The China threat and Taiwan. French President Macron disses the United States of America. We've got the issue with the leaked classified docs on the gaming platforms. We've got a Wall Street Journal reporter, Ivan Gershkovich, taken into custody, reportedly Putin wanted that done. Obviously, updates on the Ukraine war, and we still have an open border, James, and we have a very short period of time to speak with you. Let me ask this first general question. Can we survive? Can America survive another 2 years with Biden in the White House? I am afraid that we are so dangerously close to World War III, even since the last time I spoke with you, James Carafano.
Well, there's two sides or two answers to this. On the one hand, there's no question if you look at the countries in the world that most want ill to the United States, that go to bed at night and dream about waking up in a world without America, and that is China, Russia, and Iran. There's no question that they see Joe Biden as a weak and feckless president, and that every day they're thinking about how can we take advantage of this guy. That's the one hand. On the other hand, I mean, they were all here in the Trump years. They know that America can be a strong, forceful, powerful nation, and they fear that. I mean, just look at Ukraine, for example. No thanks to Biden, but because of U.S. Military assistance, they've completely thwarted Russia's plans. So they know America is a force to be reckoned with, even with Joe Biden in charge and his terrible energy policies and runaway debt spending and everything else. They've seen America bounce back before, after Jimmy Carter, under Donald Trump. So that's where we are in the world today. They're not suicidal. I mean, everybody kind of blithely talks about World War III as if that, this would be terrible for America. Well, think how bad it would be for our enemies and what they would face. And
that's a good point.
So what they want to do is they want to win without fighting. They want to take advantage of Joe Biden while he's president, and that's where we are. And in some ways, they might be just looking at the clock thinking, "Oh man, we only got 2 more years to take advantage of this. What can we do?"
Yeah, you know what, James. One of the things that I love about you is you do a great job of putting things into perspective, not just on America's behalf, but the perspective of the globe and what our allies are thinking. Okay, so let me ask this question. I'm calling this the Brittany Griner effect. We have the Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, accused of spying, faces 20 years in prison in Russia. They have a 99% conviction rate, James. What a shock. He's the first journalist to be arrested in Russia on allegations of spying since the Cold War. According to Bloomberg, Putin personally approved the arrest. And Biden says the detainment is totally illegal and declared Gershkovich wrongfully detained, which gives us the permission, or the federal government permission, to take action to try to get him free. What say you about the issue with this Wall Street Journal reporter?
Yeah, so I actually talked to folks at the Wall Street Journal. The backstory is that he has operated in Russia for many, many years.
Wow.
Everybody knows who he is. Everybody absolutely knows that he's not a spy. All the FSB people know him. I mean, so Putin Putin literally woke up one morning in the morning of peak and said, let me poke Joe Biden again, and said, take this guy into custody. And this is just the brutal person that Vladimir Putin is. They have no values or morals whatsoever in the sense of being a decent person. And so this is a completely innocent person who literally is being punished for having an American passport. And it just reminds us of who we're dealing with. You know, I know a lot of people say, well, you know, there should be a ceasefire, or, you know, we should work with the Russians against it. This is an odious regime led by one of the most evil and brutal dictators in modern times. You can't trust the guy, and he absolutely is the kind of guy that would stab you in the back. And we should get this. And of course, I'm all sympathetic for the basketball player and all that, but because this administration was so frenetic and desperate to get that basketball player back because it was good optics, even though there were other American hostages they just stranded there,
Paul Whelan.
Basically, they set out a green light that said, hey, hostage taking works. And so Putin just took another one. So I'm not saying it's Joe Biden's fault, because it's obviously Vladimir Putin's fault, but we know what this is going on.
Well, James, I'll say it's Biden's fault, because it wouldn't have happened if he didn't switch the NBA player. And listen, I'm sure she's a great person, but you don't switch a WNBA player for the merchant of death, for God's sakes. That was absolutely insane. I feel,
and that's one of the cardinal rules of kind of the way this works is there has to be proportionality. You trade like for like, and this was so lopsided. And this is the real problem for the reporter is we don't have anybody of comparable value to swap for them.
Yeah.
I mean, we've even looked at other countries like Germany and other countries to say, well, how about if you give, but there's nobody out there, because the Russians play that game. The Russians aren't going to give away something for nothing. Joe Biden did, and that's why he's in the fix he is.
Okay, all right. So moving on, we only have James Carafano. I'm speaking of James Carafano. He's a vet, first and foremost. He's also the vice president of the Heritage Foundation, and he's also a national security and foreign policy expert. You can find him on Twitter at JJ Carafano, or just Google him at Heritage Foundation. He will pop up. All right, James. So a lot of people have lost confidence in the Ukraine war. I mean, obviously, this is a war that didn't have to come to fruition. Vladimir Putin was kind of it seemed to me that Joe Biden was kind of egging him on at a point. It was the weirdest thing. But Vladimir Putin sat on the border of Ukraine for quite some time. If we wanted to stop this, we could have been stronger, armed Ukraine right away. We haven't. It doesn't feel to me as if the United States is fighting to win this war. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way. And we spent a lot of money. And I don't want to get corruption conflated with the necessity at this point, because regardless of how we feel, we're there. But give us your take on that. A lot of Americans are growing weary with this war.
Well, the Ukrainians aren't going weary with this war because it's where they live, and the alternative for them is to live under Vladimir Putin. So they're going to be fighting on no matter what. I will say that U.S. military aid has been very efficacious. On the one hand, we hear these stories about corruption and everything else. There's absolutely no evidence of corruption with U.S. military aid. There's actually a lot of oversight, a lot of it at the assistance of Republicans in Congress, rightly so. Okay. And you have to remember, Zelensky was elected to fight corruption, and nobody is more interested in fighting corruption than Zelensky, because he needs all of that to fight the war. I think it'd be very, very difficult for Ukraine to get all its territory back. But on the other hand, what's really critical is the survival of this country as a nation. And I think we've assured that. So I don't think it's money wasted. The other thing I'll tell you, just very practically speaking, is it'll be somewhere between 3 and 7 years before Russia could build back the conventional military capability it has at the start. So as a military threat to NATO, Russia isn't completely diminished. And actually, the war precipitated adding Finland to NATO. Finland's got one of the has the largest artillery force in all of Europe. It has an army of 280,000 people. So the military threat to NATO has been greatly diminished. That actually is real value for money. And a lot of people are talking about, well, we need to focus on China. Well, this is actually going to allow us to focus a lot more on China, because we won't need a bigger military footprint in NATO to deal with the Russian threat. So I think people are saying, well, this is all wasted money. I just think they're being very short-sighted.
Okay, and James, listen, a couple more questions. I know you have to go, so if you have to cut it short, you just let me know. But obviously, this leaked document or alleged leaked document is a very big deal. Some of the things that were revealed, and again, I don't know what's true and what's not, but some of the things that were revealed is Ukraine's air defenses are low. American Special Operation Forces are in Ukraine. The U.S. is spying on our allies and partners, which I take that as a given. Everyone is spying on everyone, but Egypt to supply Russia with 40,000 rockets. I'm not sure if that's true. A pro-Russia group hacked a Canadian gas pipeline, and a Russian fighter jet almost shot down a UK, I believe, spy plane. What can you say about this leaked document, or your take on it?
Well, so it appears, and there's some reporting on this in the Washington Post, that, routinely there's about, even according to defense estimates, 5,000-6,000 people that get these routine intelligence brief, which have all kinds of stuff in it. And so somebody just vacuumed up a bunch of this stuff and threw it online for his buddies in their chat room. First of all, we don't know if any of the information's been doctored or not. Second of all, intelligence isn't always right. So even though there's intelligence on there that says something, it might not be correct. And the other thing is intelligence gets outdated. So for example, yeah, it's true that the Ukrainians used up a lot of their air defense stuff, but we're sending them a lot more air defense stuff. So I'm not really sure it tells us very much. I'll tell you, here's my bottom line, and I don't mean to be partisan or
Sure.
or take a cheap shot at somebody, but safeguarding national intelligence information is a really big deal. And this is kind of part of what we have the Defense Department for. This is job one. And when you hear officials from the department say our most important thing is dealing with climate change and DEI and throwing all this effort into writing an Afghan after action report, which basically whitewashes any responsibility for all the screw ups they made. And then they stand up and say, oh yeah, we take this all very seriously and we're really serious about it. I wonder if we can really believe them. Mm. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah, honestly, you make a very good point. Speaking of the China threat, real quickly here, we're speaking to James Carafano, again, national security and foreign policy expert and vice president at the Heritage Foundation. Okay, the China threat appears to be real. James, the China put out an animated video the other day. I'm sure you saw it, of what it would look like of them attacking Taiwan. I mean, that's a straight up double middle finger, obviously, to the United States of America. How important is it for us to arm Taiwan? Can we even protect Taiwan at this point? I'll just be frank with you, James. I'm of the opinion that if China wants Taiwan with this guy in the White House, it's theirs for the taking.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's true. First of all, there's a big sea between the Chinese mainland and Taiwan. They'd have to cross that. I mean, we've done lots of war games. We've done war games. Others have done war games. Yeah, the Chinese can cross that. They can put people on the shore in Taiwan. But if the United States and its allies contest that link, can the Chinese hold that? And I think right now the answer is no. Now, 5-10 years down the line, it might be different. But right now, it is not an easy thing for the Chinese to conquer Taiwan. That's just the reality.
Okay.
The other reality is look, this is what's interesting about Taiwan is both the U.S. and China have vital interests in Taiwan. The Chinese don't want Taiwan to be independent. They don't want a U.S. military presence on Taiwan because that can project power into China. The U.S. doesn't want China to control Taiwan because if it does, it essentially controls the first island chain and locks the United States out of Asia, cuts off allies like South Korea and Japan. The status quo satisfies both countries. So if you want to break the status quo because you want to say I'm going to punish you're putting your thing, which is now being served, your interests at grave risk. And the question is, are the Chinese willing to do that? And as feckless as they know that Joe Biden is, look what happened in Ukraine. I mean, Joe Biden didn't want to fight for Ukraine. Joe Biden didn't want to have anything to do with Ukraine. But when the war started, he was so humiliated, he had to do something. This is just like Truman didn't want to fight to defend Korea during the Korean War. but he lost China. He was so humiliated that when the other guys pushed him too hard, he had to do something. And the Chinese always have to worry about that. So look, are the Chinese going to start a war? I don't know. I'm not in China, but here's what I can tell you: does it make sense for them to do that now? No. I mean, if I were China, I would say, well, let's wait and see if Biden gets elected. America will only get worse, and eventually maybe they'll fall into our lap. That's what I do.
Okay, let me just ask this here, James. French President Emmanuel Macron goes to visit Xi Jinping. We're seeing more allies of the U.S. that are starting to walk away from the U.S. and form other alliances, and our adversaries forming other alliances. This is getting really scary to me.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. You have to know Macron. Macron is one of the worst leaders and statesmen in the world today. He's hated in his own country. He went to China and actually said something about, well, we don't care about Taiwan. First of all, he got excoriated by most Europeans when he came back and said that. And then second of all, he even rejected his own comments. He goes, no, our policy to Taiwan is the same. So not only does Macron not speak for Europe.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Not only does Macron not speak for Europe, apparently doesn't speak for France. Apparently Macron doesn't speak for Macron. So this is the thing Americans have to recognize about Europe. There is not one Europe. There are whole swaths of Europe, like North, Central, Southern Europe, which are incredibly pro-American. They're anti-Chinese, they're anti-Russian, they're pro-Ukrainian. Everybody is not an idiot like Macron, and we need to start to know the difference between who our friends are. Hey, hey, thanks for having me on. So it's always an honor to be on the show with you, and really to get to cover so many issues at one time is pretty cool. So I really appreciate that. I hope you have me back.
All right. Again, thank you to James Carafano of the Heritage Foundation. And guys, I'm just going to go over real quickly some of the things. There were a couple of articles, one written by the Heritage Foundation, one written at the Federalist, but both of them have many of the same ideas. So I just want to go through those real quick. Some of the things that we can do to deter China. So one of the reasons I love having James Carafano on, I don't always agree with him 100%, but I love the fact that, listen, the guy travels around the world and he speaks with, frankly, allies and gets the dibs on adversaries as well. So he can give us a perspective of what other countries are thinking and not just have this kind of myopic view that many Americans have on foreign policy. So it's one of the reasons I appreciate him. Also, obviously, he is a vet. He studies this stuff like, nobody's business. It's absolutely insane. He's not a warmonger. For those of you, he was completely on board. He loved former President Trump's foreign policy. I know many people might disagree when it comes to the effort on Ukraine, but here's where I am at this point. We're there. We're there. We should not have been there. I don't want us to be there. It is my opinion that we are fighting a proxy war in Ukraine, but we're there. And at this point, the world is watching. I don't want to get into any other conflict with this dementia patient in the White House. But as long as we show feckless, you've heard what James Carafano said, and we all know it to be true. In the next couple of years, all of our adversaries, and quite frankly, even some of our allies, are going to try to get the upper hand on the United States of America. So before I go through some of the few things that we can do to deter the China threat, and listen, even though we don't have James Carafano on, again, I'm speaking of pieces that the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist wrote that would just make common sense, make us a little more strong. But before we do that, I do want to talk to you about some of our sponsors. First off, MyPillow. Mike Lindell of MyPillow has built a fabulous company in MyPillow. You can go to mypillow.com. Click on the radio listener square and enter my name, Carl, C-A-R-L, and take advantage of a buy one, get one free deal. That's right, for the new MyPillow 2.0. The new MyPillow 2.0 has the same patented feel as the original MyPillow, but now it has this outer fabric, this new threading, if you will, that dissipates heat. It makes it softer and it makes it smoother and cooler for you to lay your head on at night. And again, all you have to do is enter my name, click on the radio listener square, and you will get the buy one, get one free offer on the new MyPillow 2.0. Guys, I'm not lying to you. I absolutely love the pillow. Just enter my name, C-A-R-L, or if you prefer, give them a call at 800 800-858-0263, 800-858-0263. I also want to talk to you about a film, or introduce a film to you, Pardoned by Grace. Guys, with the world going so crazy, we need some inspiration. All right. I know a lot of you that listen to this podcast are either conservative and people of faith, and some liberals listen too. They'll let me know how much they hate me on occasion, but some are fair-minded as well. But from the makers of Graham Family Films comes a powerful and inspiring true story that will touch your heart and renew your faith as well. Introducing Pardoned by Grace, the incredible journey of a gentleman by the name of Scott Heiberger, played by Joey Lawrence, a convicted criminal turned prison minister who defies all odds and receives an unlikely pardon to continue his ministry. Featuring Grammy Award-winning singer and songwriter Michael W. Smith as Heiberger's pastor, Pardoned by Grace showcases the transformative power of redemption and the boundless reach of God's love. Watch Pardoned by Grace on Salem Now. And when you purchase a copy at salemnow.com, salemnow.com, a DVD will be donated to Scott Heiberger's nonprofit prison organization or ministry, which is called Behind the Wire Ministries, which provides hope and support to the incarcerated. Together, we can share the power of faith and forgiveness with those who need it most. Visit salemnow.com to purchase your DVD and donate to this incredible cause, to this incredible ministry, Behind the Wire Ministries, today. All right. And lastly, one more movie. Guys, I love the fact that Salem is partnering with the Nefarious movie and with other movies like Pardoned by Grace. But the Nefarious movie is out in theaters this weekend. Make sure you go check it out. Guys, this is a psychological thriller. You are going to love it. This is in the vein of C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters, where a psychiatrist goes in to meet a murderer, essentially, that's getting ready to be executed. And this murderer tells the psychiatrist, before you leave this jail, before you finish this interview with me, you're going to have committed 3 murders. It is fascinating how this thing takes place. This is not for the faint of heart, but finally, I shouldn't say finally, there's been some movies, but sometimes you go to the movies and it's like a Christian film and you're like, oh, great. Okay. How crappy is this going to be? No, not with Nefarious. You can take believers and unbelievers to this film alike. They are going to get the gospel without realizing, in essence, those that are non-believers, that they're getting the gospel, because they're going to be confronted with evil and demons. It's going to take twists and turns. You're going to think you're sitting in just a thriller type movie. And it's like, man, messages just hit you left and right, but you're so captivated by the performance in the movie. Go check it out. Salem has partnered with the Nefarious movie. Please go check this out. I guarantee you will not regret it. All right. The Nefarious movie and Salem, we partnered with them. All right. Now, getting back to some of the things, and again, I tried to go through as much as I possibly could. James Carafano is always on the move, always traveling, sometimes in places where we frankly can't talk to him. The guy is literally traveling back and forth throughout war zones. He's a brave man for doing it. But here's some of the things, and many of these align with what the Heritage Foundation had recommended. So I'm just going to go through them briefly. And guys, I do want to remind you, please subscribe to our podcast. All right. You can subscribe wherever you go to get your podcast. Follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Getter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Truth Social. Wherever I am, The Carl Jackson Show. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Carl Jackson Show on YouTube. We're also on Rumble for those of you that prefer Rumble. All right. So let me just mention this. Okay. So actually, the Heritage Foundation released a thorough report titled Winning the New Cold War, a plan for countering China. And we are in a Cold War with China. And I pray to God that it doesn't get into a hot war. James Carafano makes a great point in that we are terrified to get into World War III, but so are other nations, because it will hurt them as well. And so you see China wants to be the top dog. They're posturing. It's very important. I didn't get a chance to ask James Carafano about this, but just common sense dictates that. And you heard actually President Trump explain on his interview the other night with Tucker Carlson how important it is for our economy, for the U.S. dollar to remain strong. That's what gives America our strength. And so with people abandoning or considering abandoning the dollar as the world reserve, I mean, that is a scary predicament to be in. But listen, other people around the world are afraid as well of what could happen if World War III were to break out. Nobody wants it. But what China appears to be doing is trying to grow their influence worldwide. I mean, he's meeting with the Lula of Brazil, that socialist there, and they're trying to get their hooks everywhere they can so that people start looking to China as the place to go and to trade with, as opposed to, or the world's leader, as opposed to the United States of America. Lord willing, we will get Joe Biden, and any Democrat won't return to the White House in 2024. We're going to have to work our buns off in order to do that. But if that does happen, and again, we all have to work our butts off to make sure that that happens, and not just the White House, guys. If you're not focused on local elections and starting to help out guys locally, I'm talking all the way from school board to the state house and state senate. The White House will be off for naught. You've got to make your red states redder wherever you are, and if you're in a blue state, make your city, make your district, or you make your county to the best of your ability redder than it is now. That's going to be our saving grace, even if we don't win the White House. All right. So, but here are some of the things that we can do to deter China. Number one, ban dangerous Chinese apps. Now, obviously, the Congress tried to send us a doozy. They had this, I believe it was called the Restrict Act. So I do believe that TikTok needs to go bye-bye. But I think there needs to be another bill introduced, because what the federal government was trying to do is, okay, let's ban TikTok, but we want the authority to be able to ban whatever app we want whenever we want. No, TikTok is an app that is collecting data run by the CCP, and it's collecting data on Americans. It needs to go bye-bye. I know a lot of influencers are upset and hurt about that. I don't foresee it going bye-bye, frankly, anytime soon, as quickly as I would like it, but we need to brace ourselves for this. I know there's a lot of positive messages that can be had on TikTok, but we don't need our enemies that are really literally trying to replace the United States collecting all of our data. All right, ban the import and sale of Chinese drones. Guys, did you know that even some local sheriff departments are using Chinese drones, and they are collecting data even locally on very important infrastructure? This is absolutely insane. There should be no Chinese drones bought or used in America. This seems like really easy stuff. I don't understand why we're so dumb. Oh, except our president is totally corrupt. I'll have to talk about this new EV bill later. Perhaps I'll get into that next week. EVs are a complete and utter scam, and it is so dumb that we are trying. I mean, as far as saving the environment, they're not saving the environment, but beyond that, we're handing over control or a huge part of that market share to China, because that's where you have to go to get some of these magnets, batteries, so on, et cetera. All right, now a risk manage inbound investment. Number three, or one of the ways in which we can deter China, and that is China's direct investment in American firms peaked in 2015. This in the Federalist, but its national security implications remain, often funneled through middlemen who camouflage Chinese involvement. CCP-linked investment still reaches into the billions annually. The federal government has the tools to properly manage and review this. The 2018 Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act enabled the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S. to scrutinize these investments more. It has to happen. Reject damaging ESG policies. So-called environmental, social, and governance policies have been a debacle for investors, and a stop to Chinese-linked firms, which control the supply chains, ironically, for ESG, mandated renewable energy. ESG weakens the U.S. while strengthening our greatest enemies, and that includes China. Congress can end this damaging strategy through legislation, which it needed, which it indeed did before Biden vetoed it. Biden is, listen, this fool is corrupt as all get out. There's no doubt that he is compromised, but this is something that Republicans have to work on ending. We have to completely outlaw ESG, environmental social governance scores. These banks and any accountants and financial advisors have a responsibility to watch out for their clients. Customers. We shouldn't be getting putting all this woke crap into our finances. Dollars are dollars. All right. Increase munition production and arm Taiwan. I won't go into Taiwan. You heard James Carafano talk about how crucial it is for us to protect Taiwan and to arm Taiwan. But guys, we've got to increase our own ammunition here. This issue is paramount to countering China, particularly as the CCP has advanced its aggression towards Taiwan. The Heritage Report acknowledges the trade-offs inherent in the decisions about arms sales and transfers and proposes an augmentation of our defense industrial base to overcome these scarcity issues going forward. So today, we can prioritize Taiwan by sending critical munitions, ensuring the capabilities sent elsewhere do not overtly affect the defense of Taiwan, drawing down our own stocks in accordance with the law, and facilitating arms purchases from other nations. We have to get arms. We have to get more ammunition. And frankly, we need to be producing a lot of this stuff here. It's insane. Foster innovation in the U.S. maritime and shipping sectors. We need more ships. All right. America's uncompetitive and outdated shipbuilding and shipping sector diminishes U.S. competitiveness. Guys, there's no doubt about it. We need a Navy fleet that people are scared to mess with. The goal of building our military force isn't to be bullies around the world. It isn't to be policemen around the world. It's so that people look at us and say, oh, crap, I don't want to mess with them in the United States, or I don't want to mess with their people, as in their journalists like Evan Gershkovich in Russia. That's why we're strong, because America, as much as you little lefties may hate America, America is still the shining city on the hill. That's why all the illegal aliens want to cross our open southern border right now. We didn't even get to that issue, but it's still an issue. Expand export controls. The U.S. policy of engagement with China had allowed the chronic export of technologies used to advance China's military aims. Legislation has since limited certain foundational technology, quote unquote, exports, but the federal bureaucracy has failed to implement controls by refusing to label these technologies. So Congress must exercise its oversight power and force the executive branch agencies to make these determinations in line with the law so as to cease the transfer of critical security technology to CCP. Why the heck? Why the heck will we send critical security technology to China? I mean, these are simple fixes. Hold China accountable for COVID-19. We know what they did there. Don't let anybody lie to you. Screw the Faucis of the world. All these lefties that are still trying to pretend like they were really looking out for your health and the safety of the world and the safety of the United States. It was all bogus. We learned that literally everything, not just some, literally everything the CDC, NIAID, and the NIH recommended regarding COVID was freaking wrong. Everything. This is the experts in our federal government that don't even practice medicine, read a bunch of papers and theorize on what should be done. And they totally screwed us. So China, we do need to hold China accountable. We lost a lot of Americans as a result of this of China, whether it was deliberate or whether it was an accident. It matters not. They didn't tell us. They let it spread. They allowed for people that were inside Wuhan to travel the globe, right? But not travel into other parts of China. All right. Prioritize the Pacific Islands. The Pacific Islands are often overlooked in the geopolitical competition with China. Many small island nations comprise the region, but it's strategically important to maintain a U.S. presence in the Pacific, especially through its links to Asia and Australia. And that just goes back to our Navy forces. We really need to build our Navy forces. So China has focused on this region, seeking to cut off from the U.S. from its Indo-Pacific allies. Imagine if China cuts off all of these areas in which we need ships to pass through for trading and so on, etc. Guys, we would be hurting for certain. And that's what China wants to do. It's absolutely insane. It's scary where we could be headed. And we have to stop some of this stuff before it leads to a hot war and, God forbid, World War III. But if this stuff isn't stopped, or if this stuff, when it comes to China, isn't implemented, why wouldn't? I'm sorry. Why wouldn't? And if I'm a dictator, if I'm Xi Jinping, if I'm any one of our adversaries, why wouldn't you try to expand? And I'm not saying that's right, but why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try to expand your own influence when you have this weakling in the White House? So some of the things that the presidential candidates need to run on, obviously, is curtailing China. Trump is very strong when it comes to foreign policy. I don't think there's anyone better, frankly, when it comes to foreign policy. I absolutely love DeSantis, but I do know that is the advantage that Trump has over everyone in the field, and the fact that he's already been president, been there, done that. I don't like the attacks on DeSantis. I reiterate that all the time. I really think that's stupid. The left doesn't do that. We have a lot of Republicans talking about 4 years of Trump, possibly 8 years of DeSantis. Well, that's never going to happen. If all this, I see just the right going after DeSantis like nobody's business. Even if you don't want him in, you don't want to beat them up to a point where independents and moderates say, oh, no, remember what Republicans said about him, conservatives said about him. Guys, we got to be smarter than this. And we've got to start thinking long term like the left does. They always, as I heard someone say, I can't even recall, what the left does and what the right is so horrible at is it's like the left plays pool. And I think it was Vivek Ramaswamy and James Lindsay in a conversation. So the left plays pool. They hit the white ball, whatever it's called. And they don't just hit one. They don't just search for one ball to hit into a pocket. They try to hit the ball and set up the white ball for the next shot. And that's what Republicans fail to do. So if our next shot, if it's Trump and then DeSantis, or who knows how Tim Scott just entered into the race essentially yesterday, forming an exploratory committee. But the bottom line is you have to set up your next shot. So dummies, stop bashing DeSantis so hard that we don't set up our next shot. I'm sorry. Trump is a unique figure, once in a lifetime. The closest thing we have to him right now is Ron DeSantis. That's the closest thing. And I say this as a person who absolutely loved Ted Cruz, but Ted Cruz is very smart. He's very strategic. I would love to see him as president one day, frankly. But one of the things that I heard about Ted Cruz is sometimes he gets stuck in what others will think about him, or if people think he's lying about certain. This is Steve Deace, who worked in his campaign, whereas DeSantis has that backbone where he's not worried as much. So if you're hoping for 12 years, which I think we need 20 in order to really restore America to the prominence that we once held, then please, even if you can't stand Ron DeSantis, could you just shut your pie hole and just lift up Trump and just talk about policies? That would be great. We have to be smarter than this. All right. Now, the last thing that I will say before we close out this podcast, another thing that after prioritizing the Pacific Islands, the 10th thing that we need to do in order to curtail China is establish a Quad Select Initiative. What does that mean? All right, so the Quad is the U.S., Australia, India, and Japan. I'm very concerned about India. Listen, India is going to look out for India, and for that, I have some comfort. But they've been willing to work with people, other countries that they weren't willing to work work with. But anyway, the Quad is the U.S., Australia, India, and Japan, and it's is one of America's most important initiatives to counter China. It links the key players in the Indo-Pacific and builds bridges for future cooperation. This is very important. So expanding this multilateral format by selectively inviting other nations to join for military, economic, or planning purposes would allow the U.S. to enhance regional alliances and foster broader anti-CCP cooperation. So that's something that we have to cultivate. Again, Lord willing, once we get someone else in the White House in 2024. And guys, don't sit here and think that it's going to be easy, that it's going to be a landslide just because Biden is so bad. You can just look at what we're seeing in Tennessee, where the Tennessee 3 have like the news coverage. They've just totally forgotten about the Nashville 6 that were murdered by a lefty. All right. Just slaughtered at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee. And now all the news is focused on, Republicans are racist, and the Tennessee 3, one of them is a complete and utter fraud. No, actually, all of them are, but they're all social justice warriors. So anyway, we'll be talking about that. But those are the things that we need to do in order to curtail China. So I appreciate you guys tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Again, please don't forget My Pillow. Take advantage of the buy one, get one free offer, 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. You're going to love this pillow. Again, it dissipates heat with the new fabric that they're using on the outer layer. All you have to do is go to mypillow.com, click on that radio listener square, enter my name, Carl, C-A-R-L. Give them a call, 800-858-0263. Pardon by Grace. You want some inspiration? Watch Pardon by Grace on salemnow.com. You buy the DVD, check it out on salemnow. Or actually the DVD are part of the proceeds. Once you buy the DVD, will go to help out Scott Heiberger's nonprofit prison ministry called Behind the Wire Ministries, which provides hope and support to incarcerated people. So buy the DVD, Pardon by Grace, at salemnow.com. And don't forget, this weekend, go check out The Nefarious Movie. The Nefarious Movie. Guys, you will not be bored. You will be entertained. You will jump out of your seats a little bit sometimes. But you will see you will see good and evil played out right before your eyes. And it will be a roller coaster ride. And you'll get the gospel in there. And people that aren't believers won't even really get it, except by the end, maybe they will. It's exciting. Go check it out. The Nefarious Movie. We are helping to promote that at Salem. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Follow me on social media, The Carl Jackson Show, wherever you are, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, please, and subscribe to the Rumble channel, The Carl Jackson Show. And guys, this is just one of the things that we need to do. We don't grow, we don't expand this message of freedom unless you subscribe. That's the only, and share, rate, review, subscribe. We need you to do that. We really would appreciate it. And until next time, guys, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you.